Good morning. Okay. Joanna, just checking. You're fine with hardware to do the waiting room while we get started? Okay, great. Thanks. So good morning, everybody. It's 8:33, so I'm late, so let's go. We have a good crowd and a few announcements. First of all, thank you for everybody for coming. And I hope everybody's transitioning to fall, whatever that brings to you and your families, with seamless transitions. I'd say it's awkward at our house what's happening with a hybrid 15-year-old in school 2 days and home 3 days, but we'll see how it goes next week. So I've put a few things in the chat. The MDF annual meeting is a pay-as-you-like event, and we will be giving our 2020 William F. King Jr. Downtown Champion Award to Delilah, whose screen is off right now, but we would love to have any of our downtown people there. You're not seeing it in the chat, Nancy. All right, I'll cut and paste it again. Maybe that is, I don't know why that is, but we'll make sure you get it. It is next Friday, the 18th. And I also put a reminder, but we'll put this up again, the Small Scale Developers Workshop. There is an opening or a ticket at the scholarship rate of $75 rather than $180 for this workshop. The small scale developers have been doing this work with lots of Main Street coordinating programs around the country. It's an amazing opportunity for your property owners who think, oh my gosh, I don't think I can do development work. Or I know Dave Gogel in Rockland is so excited for himself to be attending. So it's up to you who you want to share that scholarship price with. You don't have to, but it's a really beneficial boatload of content on September 20, is it 23 and 22 or September 23 and 24 in the mornings. So I highly recommend that you register for that. And the other thing I want to give you an update on is data. Thank you, Joanna, for putting that up. Do you see it now, Nancy? Great, okay. Would you also cut and paste the other one? Thank you. Data collection, specifically relevant to our main streets, but as you know, we've been working for over a year trying to figure out what to have you collect, what is impactful, what is meaningful data. And you know, everybody's been asking, and we've had meetings with the USM Data Institute people. We've looked at national and other coordinating programs. Anyway, so Joanna and I have come up with a plan which is going to require less collection, but lots of optional categories of data collection for you, so that I think you'll see a pretty big shift in what you've had to collect in the past. And the other shift we're making for 2020 is that you will some of you have already been turning in your quarterlies, and thank you for doing that. This will not affect that. That data will be able to migrate with what we do collect, but we're just going to collect it twice. So we're going to collect it, you know, we're going to get it out to you next week. And then you will, that will reflect your first 6 months of 2020, and then again in December for the second 6 months. So that'll be coming, and I think you will be pleased with the results. And I'm not saying it's forever, because National has now hired a staff person who's working on data nationally and trying to make it so that everybody's collecting the same thing, everybody collects it the same way, and there's good interpretation. So the things are a little in flux, but I'm trying to adjust Maine's systems in the present. Joanna, you want to add anything on the data piece?
No, I think that covers it. Yeah, that's good.
Okay. And any questions? I know Cara and Dave just came in, but I'm not going to repeat right now what we were talking about. But any questions from those of you on Zoom? The other nice thing is Joanna's building the collection platform into LGL, which is our database system at MDF, and the interface looks really good. So, great. Don't hesitate to let me know. And like I said, I think it should be a big improvement for everybody. Let's see. I had a couple questions that I was asked to share with the group, and if you guys could chime into the chat, that would be great. Just some ideas on what are some of your best board recruitment methods. Any ideas you can share? I can't do it on a poll because our poll doesn't allow for text answers in that way. So throw in some ideas on the chat of your best board recruitment methods or techniques, or most successful. What luck have you had with either getting downtown committee members, if you are an affiliate like Nancy, or good idea, Christina, active committee members. Any other ideas that have worked well for recruiting board members? Lots of ideas coming in. Cara, in Ellsworth, we have a volunteer Google form on our website, and that seems to work really well. Delilah suggests doing a board grid to assess who you need and then reach out to specific people who will meet the need. Yep, always good to do. And Deb reinforces having potential board members be active on committees. Yep, really good idea. Great. All right, well, if you have other ideas of good board recruiting techniques, please feel free to share them in the chat. And then the other question that I received from the field that I was asked to ask you guys, which unfortunately we can't poll. I'm gonna have to talk to Zoom about having a more advanced polling feature, is, and Phil, you may have to help me with this in giving a short explanation. This is an issue in Westbrook related to trash. So are there any ways that you programs at the local level have helped with the issue of downtown trash? Anything in particular you've done? Phil, does that get to the meat, you think, of Tabitha's question?
It does, and we put that out to the national board, and we only, and I haven't checked in probably close to a week, but last time I checked, we had only had 3 responses.
Yeah.
And downtown organizations had only had very cursory engagement and involvement with these programs.
Yeah.
So they're difficult. They have a bunch of issues, licensing, you know, kind of wielding the heavy stick, if you will, when you don't really have that authority as to, so if a city wants you to do that as an organization. So it's a challenge. I don't think it's something Main Streets typically do. And I don't know if anyone on the Zoom call here has had any engagement, but it's something that's probably within the wheelhouse of Main Street, but it's just not something we've typically done. So it was great to put that out to the national chat, Ann, as you were probably alluding to, but we just haven't had much response.
Okay, well, it looks like we have a few responses here. Phil, Delilah says they have a Adopt a Park program and several annual cleanups. Brunswick says we hire a part-time person through Parks and Recs to sweep the sidewalks 3 or 4 times a week. The cost is around $3,500 to $4,000 per season. Deb, is that something you cover in Brunswick or the city covers?
We cover it.
Wow, okay. And Delilah says there's also a group that does runs and picks up trash, and we've partnered with them a few times. I have seen that, like the trash runs. Yep. And thank you, Delilah, for putting that link in there. Delilah put in an article about making your board grid for your selection process. I can tell you that Friends of Woodford's Corner was actually founded in trash removal, Phil. Specifically, they became an organization, and Delilah knows this because she's worked with them as well, because of starting to clean up like railroad tracks that right across their neighborhood. And that was their very first gathering as a group to start to talk about what mattered about that place. And so many people crossed those tracks and couldn't deal with the trash all the time that they started a cleanup, and that's how they formed. So I think the concept of events, whether it's runs where you pick up your trash, or adopt a park, or adopt a space, that's interesting. So those are some ideas, Phil, that I've seen, and I'll let Tabitha know what we've collected today as well.
Yeah, and if anyone, we already do, just real quick, we already do the spring cleanup day, the Earth
Yep.
Day. We have a clean team. Many other organizations may be doing the same thing through the federal money funded through the state. Our specific issue is businesses not complying with the dumpster ordinances. The city has, and we started this process 4 years ago, probably, and dropped it to take up a parking issue, which became very successful. Now we're picking this back up. So the problem is getting all the downtown businesses to buy into a dumpster and adhering to the ordinances, and then cordoning off and hiding those dumpsters, perhaps with some art. So that's really our very, very, very specific focus now in downtown Westbrook, and getting all the businesses, even if they're happy with their trash, to buy into a new program for the collective downtown. And again, it's just not something that downtown organizations typically do, but it is potentially within our wheelhouse, and we may become a leader in it. It's going to be a heavy lift, as the city has told us, and they want nothing to do with it. So you see the challenge.
Yeah. I can see this being like a presentation at a national conference on like main streets and trash hauling and creative ways. Like, it's actually kind of an interesting body of work. So if anybody has any other ideas or things that they are doing successfully in their downtown related to trash, Gardner looked into a collective dumpster issue several years ago. Not sure it went anywhere. And Melissa said she will see if she can find out any additional information. Great. And any advisory councils have any insight on this issue? Jane, Bill, Mac?
No, I don't. We certainly generate enough trash, but it seems to all go away. So somebody's handling it.
Great, thanks, Mac.
Great insight.
Okay. So today I thought it would be interesting. Yeah, go ahead, Bill. Oops. Bill?
Well, sorry, I had a little trouble getting out of the mute box, but yes, this is a good issue, and we've wrestled with it in Bath for years, but we've gotten the city to pretty much pick up the ball so far. One of the difficulties we had in Bath was that if any of you know Bath, we have that parking lot behind Front Street where most of the businesses are, and all those businesses had dumpsters in the back end. And of course, the effort was to try and get them somehow all put together. And Rennie's was in the mix because they hauled their trash out by themselves. And so they weren't particularly interested in doing a common dumpster, which is what Main Street and the Bath Business Association have proposed, putting a big dumpster in the middle of the parking lot and getting rid of all the little ones. Those are just some of the kinds of issues that come up. But yes, it's a good issue.
Great.
And it gets a lot of people involved, and that's what Main Street should be all about.
Thanks, Bill. So I thought it would be helpful or interesting or informative, all of the above, to have Delilah talk a little bit about some of the work she is doing on diversity, inclusion, equity, and justice in downtown Biddeford. Joanna and I attended a National Main Street training for coordinating programs one day in, was it in August? Can't remember. Which was talking about, you know, National Main Street Center and their body of work, but also bringing it down to the states and then to the local level. And we also are doing some work at MDF internally. So a lot of people are working on it. Our AmeriCorps Fellows program really is grounding those fellows in projects that make the main streets welcoming and inclusive. And so the projects are kind of under that lens. And it seems like many of you are working on it or want to start working on it. Everybody is at a different place. But I thought it would be great to hear from Delilah. I know I would like to be updated on where Heart of Biddeford is in this work, and then we can have a little discussion. So Delilah is taking her daughter to school, but she's in a car, but not driving, she says. So I'm going to turn it over to her. And Delilah, if you need me to share that document, I can do that easily.
Great. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Great. I think I have a fairly short set of things to share and some links. So if it spurs conversation or other things you want to talk about later, I'm happy to talk more. I think with Heart of Biddeford, when I joined it, we were doing a heart and soul process at the time. So I got into Heart of Biddeford when it was just this organization that was obviously working on inclusion. It was trying to make sure to hear from the broadest cross-section of the community. And so that's kind of how I got into it. That's how I saw Main Street and how I saw Heart of Biddeford. And so over my years, I felt pretty comfortable just ensuring inclusion wherever I went. You know, that our bands in the summer, you know, included African Americans and young transgender people and Indian Americans, you know, like just, I'm thinking of the bands that I've hired over the years. You know, you want to include people. Doing storytelling events that, you know, encourage people, you know, of the Franco heritage who kind of help build Biddeford to tell their story, and new immigrants to tell their story, things like that. Partnering with the synagogue to bring a Hanukkah, 8-day Hanukkah celebration and a menorah in the middle of our downtown. Just things like that. But honestly, when George Floyd was killed and Black Lives Matter, you know, really started kind of pushing for concrete systemic change, like real results. I did not know exactly where my board stood on it. Like, I'd been doing it out of like, everyone I'm around sort of agrees with what I'm doing, but I didn't know that I could I hold a protest march on behalf of Black Lives Matter. I didn't know one way or the other. And so it made me realize that we didn't really have consensus on this and that we needed to. And my first attempt of putting out a newsletter with that was written in that fuzziness. And one of the business owners downtown, who's a Black woman, wrote to me and said, you know, if that's how you're going to be phrasing this, you didn't even mention Black lives in your thing, don't call on me for, you know, support of your efforts. So it was illuminating to me that if I was going to try to like be inclusive by not really saying anything, it was not going to come off as equity focused, or like that I was actually looking for making things, yeah, more equitable in town. So I thought what we needed to do next was do an assessment. How's our organization doing on all these things? I could look at our programs and processes and hiring and staffing and board membership. And I talked to Maine Association of Nonprofits, and they said they too thought they would jump in with an assessment, but they received some recommendations to do training to get people on board and on the same page first. And I also read an article on readiness. I'll put that in the chat right now. 8 questions for building readiness. Here I come in the chat to all. And some of those questions made me realize I really didn't have a team with me. It was like Delilah trying to figure this out. And so one of the first steps of readiness was to have a team of champions. So now we have a DEI committee. It's mostly our organization committee folks, but it is a little bit broader than that as well. And then, Anne, I think if you would share the document now, that'd be great, since my cellular reception isn't awesome here. One of the first things that I recommended that our DEI committee do was to create a statement, and this will go on our new website. And I brought this to our board, or we brought it to our board yesterday. You know, the first paragraph is a combination of our mission statement. Heart of Biddeford, powered by the strength of community involvement, fosters a vibrant, inclusive, and sustainable downtown. And then I stole the language from Main Street America. As a Main Street organization, we believe Main Street is for everyone at the core of our approach. And then this next paragraph is really where I talk about, that's our statement. You know, we're proud of our efforts around diversity, equity, inclusion in the past, but we assume that in a culture with a history of structural racism and inequity, our systems, practices, and policies may be exclusive, racist, or otherwise inequitable. So that, and then the sentence that follows after that is that we're going to actively address racism and other forms of oppression. And here's our 4-stage approach to doing that. One is we're going to do this groundwork. So we're, you know, the board has read the readiness document. The DEI committee has contacted a few possible trainers, and that will be for our board and committees as well. And we're going to invite the other nonprofits in town to participate in that training. And I'll provide links to at least one organization we're considering. With that training, we'll have a little bit more shared understanding of what we mean by those terms, what our organization has to do with diversity, equity, inclusion, you know. And one nice thing I think about our committee is that, you know, the DEI committee is made up of people, you know, who are often, for the most part, you know, under 40, other than me, and are kind of used to talking about these issues in their workplaces or their college lives. And we just really made a commitment that we weren't going to assume that everybody had the same level of passion or same understanding, or even the same assumptions about DEI. And so yesterday at the board meeting, when I brought the first draft of our statement, there was a phrase in there that, you know, one person who, he's Republican, you know, from everything that he said, you know, his talking points came from Fox News, you know, there wasn't an explosion on our board. It wasn't like, let's make him feel bad or kick him off. You know, we like thanked him for bringing up, you know, a point of view that is representing our community. How can we include what you're thinking with this? And I was really pleased about that, because that is, you know, part of the job of Main Street, I think, is to get everybody on board. And you don't do that by like finding the people who think exactly like you. So that's the onboarding process. It probably won't always go as smoothly as yesterday did, but that's what we're up to. And then outreach and assessment. The assessment part will have 2 parts. You know, one is we want to hear from the community. What makes this place home? What makes this place welcoming to you? What does Heart of Biddeford do that makes, you know, you feel more included to, you know, add your opinion and add your voice and add your skills and, you know, want to be here? And what what do we do or could we do that would take away from that? And we think that having that feedback, that information from the community will enable us to do a better assessment. So it's not just going to be like, could have done an assessment this month, but it would have been without like a shared understanding of what these definitions mean. It would have been without feedback from the community. And just in a sentence, that outreach is also going to be done primarily through our Main Street Fellow. And they will be partnering with an artist in residence through our arts organization. So it's going to be using really creative, out in public, COVID safe ways to hear from people, as well as the traditional, surveys and stuff. So once we have our assessment in place and all that community feedback, we will draft a plan where we're, just going through the processes at Heart of Biddeford and the programs, and saying, what do we need to do to increase equity and inclusion and diversity? And we'll get some more community feedback on that. So not just like take feedback, assuming we've got it, writing it up and posting it, but instead saying, here's what we think we heard, how'd we do, and then launching it. And the launch is not like, okay, now we've made a plan and it can sit on a shelf. It will have, annual and ongoing check-ins on how we're doing.
That's great.
I do have a link to this document, which also
Okay.
has, the one you're having there, Anne, is kind of a briefer version. So I'm going to go into the chat.
Thank you.
This just has that statement as well as a whole bunch of other like documents to go read or background information or just more information about how we went about this.
That's great. Before I close this page, Delilah, and open up the discussion a little bit, I do have a question related to the phases. You said that you were hoping to bring in a professional trainer for Heart of Biddeford and some other nonprofits in the community. At what phase are you starting to engage the consultant?
The trainer?
Yeah.
Right away, phase one.
Okay, great. I wasn't
So,
sure how much of it you were, working on it alone and how much you were bringing in outside expertise.
The training is not so much helping us do the work in the organization. It's more ensuring our organization is on the has the same set of understandings about why an organization would want to be inclusive. What are the ways that it is? What are the ways that you could be not inclusive? So it's more general learning, training that we're bringing in.
Great.
But the rest we're doing in-house.
Okay, great, thank you. I guess I'm gonna stop sharing for a minute and I can always pull it back up if people need it. I would love to, I guess, raise of hands. I guess this could have been a real poll, Joanna, but we'll just do it through raise of hands. How many of you have started on this journey, or maybe long ago, or maybe recently? How many organizations have started on doing this kind of work? Hello, Sarah Hansen. Okay, so Rockland, Greater Portland Landmarks. Anybody else? How many have planned or would like to start on this type of work in the next 12 months?
Oh, Christina wrote, we just created a value statement. She meant to send that to the whole group.
Oh, great. Okay. Thanks, Christina. Great. Let's see. What kind of questions? Oh, bye, Sarah. Thanks for coming. She says, Delilah is amazing. I guess, what questions or comments do you all have, either specifically for Delilah or on this topic, this body of work? Do you think it relates? Is it something, like I said, you want to take on? And you can either use the chat or just take yourself off mute. David, go ahead.
I'm just curious from Delilah. First of all, thanks for sharing. So, we back in June, we kind of we went through a process where we were trying to get our small businesses to attend a town hall that I had shared and kind of take some effort, and I'm happy to share what that effort was. But I got a lot of pushback at the board level about our involvement and how essentially under the guise of like Rockland Main Street shouldn't be taking an advocacy role, like that's a part of our, and I was like, this doesn't feel like advocacy at all, you know what I mean? And they're like, well, it's just, this is not what your role is in the community. So I'm just curious. So I did this work with some business owners independent of kind of the Rockland Main Street structure. And I'd like to the reason why it hasn't been more formalized is for that reason. And so how did you get everybody to understand, like, this is different than taking a stance on cruise ships?
I think because of the history of the heart and soul process of the idea being we want to get the organization committee's pillar in Main Street. How can you get everybody around the table if you don't know who everybody is, or they don't feel welcome coming to your table, or they have a whole beautiful other table and we've never seen it before? So that's kind of a common value, but I feel like I was kind of similar to you in some ways, Dave, of going off on my own. And this has been a little bit of a slowing down process to make sure that the board is actually as on board with it as I am, so like they were fine with making sure our bands were diverse. I don't think it really even occurred to anybody how that happened. Different thing to be posting in support of Black Lives Matter protest out at UNE that happened on Wednesday in our social media. So I guess I've needed to slow it down, and I don't even assume that everybody is on board with this yet.
So you broke up a little bit, but it's so specifically sharing like the UNE stuff. So did you say that you did get pushback there, or you didn't?
I didn't, but I am, out here with my DEI committee.
Okay.
We're a few steps ahead of the board. The board asked that group to take the lead. But there's going to be a negotiating process that's still happening right now, I think.
Okay. Yeah. I feel like we could talk about this, and I don't want to keep going around. And I guess maybe we take it offline, but this is something that I feel like we have some business owners that are really excited about taking on this work. Specifically just to share, right, just based on the demographics up here, this comes more into us looking at the supply chain for our small businesses and how to better incorporate, diversity, equity, inclusion in the supply chain. That was something that we took away from that town hall that we all joined. That was, again, like a national town hall and that was a great takeaway, but it feels like something, I feel really bad about not taking a larger stance as an organization. However, it's because of the makeup of our stakeholders, if you will. I've been really like handcuffed, and it's like I'm just curious what others are doing, and if others don't feel handcuffed or others are, I don't know.
Yeah, I would like to hear from other people. I actually think your point, Dave, is a really interesting one, and is the starting point or the jumping off point for this conversations in your community and in your organization. Anybody else struggling with the point that Dave has mentioned? Phil, were you going to say something?
Oh, sorry. All right, can you hear me now?
Yep.
I got to be 100% honest. I've been very tentative about this. All we have shared is the national statement, and that was while we still had Abigail. And I think some of the other board members share my tentative, and if you know anything about me, Ann, I'm not a tentative individual. So this is a challenging topic. Delilah, I was just perusing through your newsletters. Wonderful job, by the way. Looking for that statement. We've kind of reimagined our newsletters a little bit, and we're going to look to tighten those up a little bit more, over the next few months. While we're still not doing a ton of events, I think it's one of our better ways of communicating right now. I'd love to. I just couldn't find your statement in your newsletter you had mentioned. Is there some way you could send that out to the board? I think that would be even our second thing that we would send out to our constituents as an organization. Again, right now, all we did is put out the national statement. I was very much looking forward, and this is wonderful today. Thank you so much, Delilah. This is great. I think every organization here needs to be doing this. One of my other fears is this is really Black Lives Matter 2.0. If everyone remembers, I think it was 3 or 4 years ago. That was very short-lived. I think it was 2 or 3 months. This one's got obviously staying power. If you guys didn't watch the first NFL game last night, this one definitely has staying power. So, the first, 20, 30 minutes of the whole game last night in the pregame kickoff, this one's going to have staying power. So I think we all need to have statements exactly as you've done. Whatever you can send out to the group through Ann or yourself, Delilah, thank you for leading the way on this. This is a challenge. And Westbrook is one of those communities, certainly, that we have got our percentages of our immigrant population, our inclusivity. This is going to be an issue for us.
Yeah, and I guess to even just to expand on that, right? It's like even beyond like making a statement or even taking a stand, quote unquote. It's like why is it okay to share some things on our channels, but if I got a lot of pushback sharing about the date and time of a protest, right? And it's like, why is it okay for city councilors to go promote and attend that, but yet the Main Street director, it's like, hey, you really shouldn't be taking a visible stand either way. Like that is not your role in our community. And so it's like, is that like, I feel like if I put out a statement, like, and then sort through, I feel like there's less pushback there. If I take a active role in this process, that's where the pushback is. And I want to make sure, just if we're going to take the time to talk about this, I want to be really, really clear on what I'm saying. It's like, everybody will be fine with me incorporating words in a document that I make visible. But as soon as I start to take an active role on the ground in promoting and an active role in saying, like, how many of your suppliers are, like, when you take a hard look at your supply chain, what does that look like? People are going to get really uncomfortable, and they already have. And that's like, well, that's not your role, Dave. Like, your role isn't to make people take a hard look at their supply chain. Your job is to promote, right? You know what I'm saying? Like, this feels like this is what I'm, and I disagree. I disagree. I think that's probably clear. However, I'm wondering what others, that's really where my specific questions are around. It's like, everybody's going to be fine with me incorporating words, but as soon as I actually use our platform and our levers to do things, that's when people are going to get upset, right? It's the same way where I can make a statement on climate change, but as soon as I go use that lever to go think about the cruise ships, then that's a thing. So that's kind of I think that's an analogy there, right? It's like everybody's gonna be fine with me making a statement about we want Rockland to X, Y, you know what I mean? But as soon as I say, well, how is this affecting our working, our erosion, all these things, then I'm like overstepping. So this same thing is gonna happen here. I can make a statement, I can share things, but as soon as I say, hey, we're organizing or we're taking an active role, I'm overstepping.
Delilah, you're nodding your head. Were you going to say anything?
Sorry. Can you say that again, Ann? Because
I just, you were nodding your head, and I wasn't sure whether you were going to say something.
Just real quickly that I think the difference between a statement and a plan need to be made clear to boards. Like, we made a statement, but then there's 4 steps to be able to make a plan, and then I'm going to be acting from that plan. And what I wanted to do was to skip over a few of those and like do an assessment, make a plan, do assessment and then change things. And I think the slowing down is what is needed in order to get the people on board to go with you. And then you've got the support to do the kind of work you're talking about, Dave, because it refers back to your plan.
So I would love to hear
The reason why I'm making this, supply chain.
Yeah. Sorry. Thanks, Delilah. I'd love to hear from Christina, Deb, Rob, Melissa, Cara, any of you who, where are you in this process? And, are there any things that you want to share with the group on what you're thinking about this topic?
Well, I was just gonna make a comment about to David about his role, and like, I feel like you're at a time right now, David, where you're still new enough where you can make your own role and lead. And maybe this is an unpopular statement, but in Skowhegan, I went a little bit rogue, but I had the support of a couple of board members, and then we had some successes, and now things are rolling very smoothly, and I was able to kind of do things completely different compared to my predecessor. And I think that you are a completely different person than Gordon was, and I think maybe you need to kind of and I'm sure you have no problem doing this, but like it's unfortunate that you don't have the board support to kind of run things a little differently than Gordon did. And I would say that you should create your own role, and not telling you what to do, but I think that this is the opportunity for you to do that, and to kind of maybe take Main Street, Rockland Main Street in a different direction, knowing that, in the future, this is really going to matter, and maybe making a stand now is what you should probably do. I don't know. And I'm saying this as someone who's not making a stand in Skowhegan, but I think that you should take this upon yourself to kind of direct your own path and maybe make Rockland Main Street a little different than the direction you guys were going before. So that's my only an opinion, of course.
Since you have the floor, Christina, would you care to reflect on, like, organizationally, where you guys are in this body of work? You've certainly had some hot issues, in particular with the mascot in Skowhegan.
Yeah, of course, the mascot issue flared up. Well, before I started, it was a hot topic, and then it kind of simmered down a little bit. And then 3 years ago now, it boiled back up again. And then last year, of course, the governor signed into law an ordinance, or a thing where you couldn't have a mascot as a school, or your school mascot could not be a Native American of any sort. And so that really kind of helped calm things down a little bit, but there are still problems in Skowhegan where people are distraught about that and want to overturn the school board and want to overturn the governor because they think that, putting someone new in office will change that. And I think that kind of gets to the heart of, Skowhegan's issues in the first place. We have a pretty divided community, and people get angry when you try to tear their identity away or tell them that there are new things that they should consider in the world these days, because a lot of them haven't left Skowhegan and don't understand that. And from when, like a month ago, my board president, Matt, he was excited about the idea of creating a values statement for the organization, because he feels that we should probably be leaders in this, because no other organization in Skowhegan will put out a value statement that kind of reflects on diversity and inclusion in our community. And so we've drafted one. It's still kind of under review by the board. We had I think we're going to kind of tighten it up a little bit, but we stole from National Main Street also. And also the Maine Community Foundation, we reviewed theirs. And we've been kind of careful about the language that we've chosen, because we don't want to be off-putting to people who are strongly in favor of all lives matter. And there are signs around Skowhegan that say that, and in our region. People are still trying to understand why it's insulting to say all lives matter, and white privilege is something that people up here, and I'm not saying everyone, but there are a lot of people that get angry when you talk about white privilege and don't understand what it is. And So we're trying to navigate that kind of pretty carefully, but we are, we've encouraged the Economic Development Corporation also to put up a value, to kind of put out a value statement. And Matt and I are both on the board for that. So there's a little bit of leverage there, of course. But I think that it's going to happen with the Economic Development Corporation as well. And I think we're probably, through our fellows, with our Main Street Fellow, we're going to tackle this from an economic development standpoint. So we won't be hosting any protests or attending any, there won't be probably many in Skowhegan anyway. But I think as we look to the future of Skowhegan, we're trying to think about this from an economic development and how we can be more accommodating and welcoming to community members and potential entrepreneurs and business owners who are from perhaps underserved and diverse communities, and how we can help them through the process and get them to Skowhegan possibly. So
Great, thanks for that update. Anybody else want to share what their organization is doing in this work? Adam, I see you took yourself off mute.
Yeah, I'm just curious almost at like the continuing at the poll level for folks. It's great to hear the nuance of what's happening in Skowhegan, and I think that's often the case, is that like it's complicated. But I think there's also, this is a moment sometimes when we're silent, either because we're uncomfortable, we don't know, or because we're not on board with it. So I'm just curious where folks are at, if that's this conversation is one they're not sure what to do with, or one they're not interested in, or those sorts of variables.
And if I could jump in here from the outset, two of the biggest problems facing our communities is, and Christina kind of touched on it. So we're a lot of mill communities in this organization here, and we're typically 200, 300-year-old, let's admit it, white privileged organizations, communities. And I forget the poll that I read, but we're the least diverse state in America. A couple of weeks ago, I got that in an email. So those are the two biggest challenges I think facing us. So this conversation is already difficult from the outset. You throw those two factors on top of it. This is not easy. So Dave, I mean, kudos to you guys for even having all those conversations. These are difficult conversations. You're right, and it's almost like, so the point is, if you almost even post something that an organization is holding, are you supporting that? Because some people look at that as you're supporting that, even if you just say this is happening, and that's difficult. And we all know that's not true, but perception is, we're going through that right now in Westbrook, even though we say some things and say, okay, this is one of our business partners. Well, some people push back, well, this business partner supports this, or this business partner may be a part of this other organization. So the perception is very difficult. And it's even more difficult with this issue. This is not an easy one.
Yeah.
I'd like to just chime in, and maybe this isn't a popular thing to say, but Heart of Ellsworth has taken a stance where we are listening, and we're really trying to stay in tune and in pace with what our community needs. We've put out a statement, and our board regularly shows up at protests. I go to them because they're in our downtown. I personally, as executive director, feel that it's really important for us to be there to bear witness to what's happening on our main streets. And I would say from that perspective, if nothing else, most protests are happening in downtowns and on main streets around America and around the world. And we haven't taken a huge stance yet. We haven't even put our statement on our homepage, which we do need to do. And we also, I thank whoever made a statement about it being in a newsletter. That's a great idea. And sort of, you end up having people who have buy-in and have clicked on that button to be a part of your newsletter that are listening. So chances are those people are really going to be happy to read what your organization has to say on this issue. But I guess my big thing is that I feel that we all need to be, as in our roles, I think it's our responsibility to be listening and going at the pace at which our community's at and not feeling the pressure on a national level. And we all have so much more work in the course of a 24-hour day to do than we have time for. And there are so many issues. And I think that we just need to not feel the pressure of everything that's happening on, because everybody's organization and everybody's city and town and Main Street is at a different level of development. And so I just ask you all to be patient with yourselves too. So don't feel that pressure to respond, but respond when your community is ready.
Great. One last question. Oh, Delilah, yes.
Can I comment on?
Yep.
Real quick, because I agree with you, Kara, so much on the pace and the inclusiveness of moving at the pace of your community. And, you know, the Black woman who works in my office really is not patient. The Black woman who owns that business really doesn't give a shit about patience. So, you know, when you say the pace of your community, who is our community? And if you're talking about the majority white people, oh, they'd like to be very patient. So it's this balance between being patient with every human being, but also justice is not infinitely patient. Maybe that's the way to say it.
Yeah, I agree.
And just to add onto that, I mean, only because I think, Anne, you maybe like overheard this conversation because I was on the phone with you when this happened, but like, even though in Rockland, it's not as diverse as it is in Biddeford, I mean, we have business owners who are fighting in the street, and I was, you know, Anne overheard some of this, but like, we have business owners that have Black Lives Matters signs in their windows, and other business owners, when we have an accident on Main Street and police are out there, we have business owners like with police screaming at that business owner who's also city councilor, being like, so you don't think their lives matter as much as Black lives? And it's I guess my point only to say, it's like, it feels very weird that Rockland Main Street isn't taking a stance in something that is causing literally like fights in the street. Like, and so while it's strange because we have very little diversity in our actual community. However, you could, if anybody's been to Rockland, it's like you could literally go down Main Street and see, oh, this storefront is completely flyered with Black Lives Matter, and this store next to it thinks that they are terrible for doing that and that they'll scream at them all day long. So it's like, this is, I guess I only bring that up to say, it feels, outside looking in, it feels strange that we would even need to be having this big of a conversation with it. However, I feel as though this is like the most important, how can I talk about trash removal when these people can't even talk to each other? And that's, I think, the thing is, like, they're not even talking to each other anymore because it's so politically tense in our downtown right now that the things that we should be talking about, like, oh, like trash removal that we started this conversation with, it's like, they're not going to work together on that. They think each other, one thinks that they should defund the police, and the other thinks that they're just like being ridiculous and they're on the wrong side of history. It's just, it's the only thing I think to talk about.
I think, you know, there are lots of cases of tension in our communities right now. I mean, Christina and I have spoken about the masks and the non-masks in Skowhegan being a point of tension. So there's no question there's this kind of volatile feeling in many of your communities. I'd love to hear from some of you one last time, Melissa, Rob, or Deb, just to hear what your thinking is on this work in your communities.
We have a lot of work going on because we have Bowdoin College here. So they are very attuned to the whole situation, and they've got many statements that have come out. The town council has issued a declaration, or it's not an ordinance, but it's that word is escaping me, but they have issued a statement. In working with our downtown folks, that topic has simply not come up. And I don't want to be naive about it, but I'm not going out looking for problems. Not saying that there aren't any by any means, but you know, there are some protests in town. We are very, I'm involved on every committee you could possibly be on, from human rights to just to marijuana, to meeting with the police chief and the force to find out what is happening. And I know that we have a new police chief now who's made great inroads with the community. And we also had quite an influx of asylum seekers into the community who have been embraced. So I personally do not hear that negative, the racial problems. Not saying that they're not here, but I don't hear them, and I'm not out asking, you know, are you being inclusive? We are inclusive by the actions of our organization. We listen to everyone, we embrace everyone, I'm not gonna go looking for problems when, not saying that there aren't any, I'm not, but we have not made a statement. The board hasn't even talked about it. And because I think that there are so many groups within the town of Brunswick that are already addressing the issue. And so many of us are part of so many of these groups. So it's not like we're not educated on the whole issue. It's at this point in time, it simply hasn't come up as an issue for the board to take a stand on.
Great. Well, I appreciate you sharing, Deb, what's happening in Brunswick. So this is a big, mighty topic. I feel like we barely scratched the surface this morning, but as everybody knows, I'm a stickler for ending on time. And I hope I'm not cutting off anybody else that didn't get a chance to speak. Perhaps we will figure out a way to continue this conversation. I would love to just ask quickly and just use a thumbs up or nothing else. Do you feel like some of you, do you feel like you need training? Do you feel like you need language? Do you feel like you're comfortable in this space? I'm trying to figure out if there's a way that we should be supporting any of you in this journey. Thank you, Delilah. More conversation. I agree. So feel free to let me know that. Think about our conversation this morning. More language, Cara said. Because I feel like this is just a little bit. We scratched the surface. And thank you, Delilah, for kicking us off. I know today we didn't get to do our open conversation, but I really didn't want to cut this conversation short. So thanks for joining us for our optional monthly Zoom meeting. Joanna or Adam, is there anything we need in closing that I'm forgetting? Nope. Okay, great. All right, well, thank you all. Hope to see you at Small Scale Developers Workshop, MDF annual meeting. Congratulations, Delilah. And you know, let any of our team know if you have something specific that you need with. I'm supporting lots of your organizations individually, but obviously our team is here to help you. So thanks everybody and have a great rest of your Friday. Bye.
Thanks, Anne.
Okay.
Michael.